Water. A single drop can start a movement. It's a part of us, our ecosystems, and our economy. What does water mean for you, for our communities, for the whole of Europe? Our precious natural resource is under threat from climate change, pollution, industrial misuse. But there is hope. And it starts with people like you, water and marine specialists and industry experts. So it's time to stop and listen. To come together and collaborate across sectors and unleash the collective power of water. EIT Water, the new knowledge and innovation community, coming soon.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled EIT Nuts and Bolts, Creating a Financially Sustainable Innovation Ecosystem. My name is Angela Limi. I'm the spokesperson of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and it's my pleasure to be moderating today's webinar. I'd like to welcome everyone back who has joined us. This is our third webinar, and a special welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. These webinars are designed to help you prepare for our upcoming call for proposals for a new knowledge and innovation community in the water, marine, and maritime sectors and ecosystems. This is the third webinar. Our previous two webinars, recordings and slides are available on our website. And the same will happen with this webinar. It is currently being recorded, and the webinars and slides will be made available shortly after on our website. So today is all about getting into the machinery of what makes an EIT knowledge and innovation community. I'm very excited to welcome some of our colleagues and experts here today. First, we will have Adam Rottenbacher, who is the head of operations here at EIT, who will tell you more about the governance principles between the GIGs. Then we will have David Tosh, who is the head of the supervision and monitoring unit. Following that, we will have Alessandra Palla, who is the head of the grant implementation. Then we will have Szabolcs Borda, who will talk to you a little bit more about how the grants work in terms of the management cycle. And finally, we will have our colleague Eva Antanaseva, who will talk to us more about impact and what that means and how we measure it. So without actually, let me remind you a little bit about the rules for today's webinar, so we get that all clear. So in this Teams webinar, there is a Q&A function. For those of us who have joined the first two, you know exactly how this works. You can submit your questions through this Q&A function at the top of your screen. These questions will then be fed into our speakers' presentations. So we will either directly answer them at the Q&A session that follows after each speaker, or we will publish, they will be found in a document that will be on our website titled Frequently Asked Questions. So please do take this opportunity, especially in today's webinar, which goes really deep into how the EIT governance and knowledge innovation communities and grant cycle works, to ask any questions that you may have. All the slides, as I said, will become available, and this is being recorded. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Adam on the stage. Virtual stage.
Thank you, Angela, and welcome everyone. I will start the presentation. My name is Adam Rottenbacher. I'm head of operations at the EIT. So just give me 2 seconds to start the PowerPoint. I hope you can see it now. Angela, if you could just quickly confirm.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, super, excellent. So what I'm going to talk about today is the governance model or governance system of the EIT and the KICS. On this first slide, you can see a schematic illustration of this governance system. I'd like to start with the EIT on the left-hand side. So as you are all aware, EIT is an EU body, has been set up under the Treaty of the European Union, and EIT's governance model has two levels. So on the top, there is the EIT Governing Board, which is the EIT's main decision-making body. They provide the EIT community with strategic direction. And then under the leadership of the EIT director, there is the EIT staff who guides, monitors and supervises the KICs and also manages the grants offered by the European Union and the EIT. On the right-hand side, you can see an example structure of an EIT KIC. So KICs are so-called institutionalized European partnerships under Horizon Europe. The newly designated consortium for EIT Water in its startup year will also be expected to set up its legal structure called the KIC legal entity and headquarters and collocation centers. This KIC legal entity will have to act in the best interest of the KIC, of course. Now, the choice of the legal entity is of the KIC, but it will determine the governance structure in a way. However, typically, this KIC legal entity will function with an independent management team and also as independent supervisory board that will oversee the work of the executive team. And while the ultimate decision-making body, depending on the chosen legal form, will be the assembly of partners or shareholders. Typically, the partner assembly will appoint the first supervisory board of the KIC in line with good governance principles that are set by the EIT. I'm going to talk about them a little bit more. And then the board will be in charge of selecting and appointing the KIC CEO, so the Chief Executive Officer. The Chief Executive Officer will, of course, be supported by an executive team consisting of top management positions such as Chief Financial Officer, CFO, and Chief Operating Officer, COO. The experience shows with the existing 9 KICs that an independence and a clear mandate and empowerment from the partners to the management team is crucial to enable the CEO to function properly and to have sufficient room for maneuver. Now, in the middle of the screen, you can see that the relationship between the EIT and the KIC is regulated by the 7-year partnership agreement that we will sign with the KIC after the KIC has successfully completed the startup year. The KIC will have to comply with good governance principles which are enshrined in this partnership agreement. So on the next slide, we can see some details about the EIT Governing Board. So on the EIT governance, the Governing Board of the EIT brings together 15 members from higher education, research, business and innovation. So these members have a four-year term and are appointed by the European Commission. And this appointment also takes into consideration balance between not just the knowledge triangle, so education, research, business, but also gender and geographical representation. This will also be an important principle for the KICs, as I'm going to explain. So the EIT Governing Board is independent and autonomous in their decision-making. They don't represent countries, but they are responsible for selection, evaluation, and support of EIT knowledge and innovation communities. So they are the ones who will also select and designate the new KIC in the field of water, maritime, and marine ecosystems and sectors. So if we look at the KIC governance systems a bit more in detail, as per the EIT regulation, KICs have substantial autonomy to establish their internal organization and composition. So this means in practice that KICs are free to choose in a way their legal form and governance systems. However, this is only true as long as the KIC makes progress towards EIT objectives and KIC objectives, and KICs also have to take into account the strategic direction provided by the EIT and the governing board. And so whatever structure the KIC will choose, they must follow a set of good governance principles that are in the partnership agreement. You can see these main principles listed on the slide, but we could actually summarize them in a couple of keywords: transparency, openness, independence, and diversity. So the governance arrangements must be communicated transparently. Calls for new supervisory board members or C-level positions must be advertised widely to make sure that we attract the best candidates in a competitive selection procedure. Obviously, the KIC management team has to be able to act fully independently and in the best interest of the KIC. pursuing the EIT and KIC strategic objectives. But also the chair of the supervisory board has to be independent from KIC partners, and so must be at least 50% of the members of the board. But this is to ensure independent supervision of the KIC management team. It's not just independent from the executive team, but also free from potential partner bias. Of course, supervision and management of operations must be clearly separated, just like in any well-functioning corporate governance system. And finally, diversity. So we would like to see a balanced representation of the knowledge triangle in the KIC board. And we also strongly recommend to strive for diversity in terms of gender and geography as well. If we move to the next slide, this is just a recap of the key points once again, like on a cheat sheet. So we would like to see a balanced partnership, checks and balances in place, so independent supervision of the management and separation of ownership from management, and of course governance systems have to have a size that's fit for purpose and that enable quality decision-making process in order to act in the best interest of the KIC. Another main topic I would like to cover today is how the EIT Governing Board steers the KICs, what tools they have at their disposal, and how they work. So we will talk about two of them in particular, the performance-based funding and the so-called supervision framework. So just to start, why do we have performance-based funding at all? So it's, of course, a provision of the EIT regulation, and its goal is to ensure the best and most efficient use of the EIT budget in order to reach the highest possible impact. So this funding modality also incentivizes the KICs for best performance and to make continuous progress towards financial sustainability. The allocation of the EIT grant is based on annual performance review conducted by the EIT Governing Board. I'm going to explain that in more detail on the next slide. And the second topic is the so-called supervision framework, which consists of several additional tools that the EIT Governing Board can use based on the results of EIT's continuous monitoring activities and also the periodic evaluations that we carry out. These tools can range from providing strategic recommendations to a KIC, but it can extend to serious corrective measures as well. And I'm going to have another slide on that one. Coming back to the performance-based funding, you can see on the screen the criteria that we use currently for performance assessment of the KICs, which is the basis for the performance-based funding. So the governing board every year has a look at the progress that the KIC or all the KICs have made in implementing their multi-annual strategy, including progress towards financial sustainability. I have already mentioned this term a couple of times, and my colleague David will go into more details what that means. Of course, we also have key performance indicators with which we measure the KIC's outcomes and results and impacts, and we're going to cover that also in more detail. And then we also look at, of course, the business plan in line with Horizon Europe criteria that you are probably aware of and you can see on the screen. An important note here is that the EIT has certain strategically important objectives or initiatives, flagships, for which we have earmarked allocations stemming from the EIT legal framework. And these initiatives are the EIT Regional Innovation Scheme, where KICs have to allocate between 10 and 15% of their budget to activities that contribute to the objectives of the EIT. We also have joint community activities, sometimes call them cross-KIC or shared services, and we have the Higher Education Initiative, which all have their own earmarked allocations. And then talking about the supervision framework, as you can see here in the first bullet point, the EIT Governing Board is primarily responsible for steering and monitoring the activities of the EIT and the KICs. So what are their tools? I have already covered the funding allocation. We're going to talk more about the impact framework and the financial sustainability. So I'd like to cover here the bullet points in green. The Governing Board also has adopted a monitoring and evaluation strategy. And this includes also go, no-go decisions at 7 and 15 years. So what does this mean? I've already mentioned that the EIT and the KIC and the new KIC signs an initial partnership agreement for 7 years. Before these 7 years are over, EIT has to conduct a comprehensive assessment based on criteria that are set out in the EIT regulation. And based on the outcome of this review, EIT Governing Board has to decide on extension of the partnership agreement for another 7 years or stopping the KIC. Similarly, before the end of the 15-year life cycle, so at the end of the second 7 years, EIT again has to conduct a so-called final review based on the same criteria, and then the governing board takes a decision whether or not to sign a so-called memorandum of cooperation with the KIC for continued cooperation after the 15 years. This is what happened with the first wave of KICs, climate KIC, digital and inner energy, this year as they are in year 15 in 2024. Then strategic recommendations. So in case we see room for improvement in performance of a KIC in certain areas, then the governing board can issue strategic recommendations for that KIC to follow. In case there are, let's say, problems, let's say lack of alignment by the KIC with EU policy objectives, or there is a risk of systemic underperformance or non-compliance in certain areas, then the EIT Governing Board can also take corrective measures, and this can range from assigning an independent audit or an expert review to conducting reinforced monitoring. And they can decide to participate as an observer in KIC board or management team meetings, but it can be actually even very serious and can lead to reduction or withdrawal of EIT grant, or in the most extreme cases, it could lead to suspension of termination of the partnership agreement. But not to finish my part on such a dramatic note, this has never happened before, and we hope that it will never happen in the future either. But it's important to note that these are the tools that are available for the governing board to steer and monitor the activities of the EIT and the KICs. So with this, I conclude my part, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adam. Next, so I encourage everyone, please, for those of us just joining us, to use the Q&A function at the top and to ask any questions you may have, as Adam will be back at the end. So next, I'm happy to introduce my colleague, David Tosh, who's the Head of Supervision and Monitoring Unit here at EIT.
Thank you, Angela, and good morning to the participants of this session. My name is David Tosh, Head of Unit at the EIT. And you may ask that why we are speaking about financial sustainability in the context of a KIC, which hasn't been even designated. Well, this is an integral part and a distinctive feature of the EIT model, and the obligation of financial sustainability is stemming from the EIT regulation and strategic innovation agenda adopted by the European Parliament and the Council, and other partnerships do not have such a requirement. What does it mean? What does financial sustainability mean? Well, it means that gradually the KIC shall decrease its dependence from EIT contributions. It shall finance its activities from self-generated and other third-party resources in order to achieve impact. It doesn't mean that each and every activity shall become financially sustainable individually. However, the whole portfolio of activities, as well as the ecosystem as a whole, should become financially sustainable over time. This is a long-term objective, and on the picture you can see the life cycle of a KIC and in parallel its evolution towards financial sustainability. So in the startup phase, the KIC is set up, develops its strategy. It includes a financial sustainability strategy, and the KIC starts implementation. Then it moves to the ramp-up phase, which is about the development and further expansion of impactful activities, building a portfolio which will yield revenues in the future. And in this phase, the KIC starts to collect already revenues. Then the KIC moves to a maturity phase, which is full extent of implementation. There are substantial revenues collected from earlier investments, from activities, from services. And in this phase, the EIT funding starts to decrease and shall be gradually replaced by other sources. And finally, the KIC moves to its last phase, where the KIC is already financially sustainable. EIT becomes a minority funder in this phase, and the KIC shall be able to maintain a large portfolio of knowledge triangle integration activities without substantial EIT funding. Moving ahead, I will walk you through the key aspects of financial sustainability. So first, a business mindset is needed when developing the KIC strategy. So you should choose a business model which enables the KIC to achieve financial sustainability. And this aim must be driven by top management with the full support of the KIC board, obviously. Second, Adam already referred to it, that the KICs are free to choose their legal setup, legal structure, but it's very important to choose the right setup in terms of corporate and governance structure, which will support the financial sustainability objective rather than posing obstacles. We are aware of the challenge that the KICs are supposed to be for-profit and not for-profit at the same time. So that's why you can see or you can check the existing models of KICs. They are often not-for-profit associations with a wholly owned subsidiary, which is the commercial arm. Third point, the diversification of revenue sources is key. I will come back to that on the next slide to give some examples how you can diversify your investments and sources of revenues. Fourth, financial sustainability isn't about revenues, but it's also about costs. So the principles of economy, efficiency, effectiveness must be respected. It requires to set up a lean and cost-efficient legal structure and operational structure. And it also requires that some critical functions are put in place within the KIC, such as budget management, cost control, financial controlling. And last but not at least, the EIT will also closely monitor the fulfillment of this objective or the progress towards financial sustainability. Adam already referred to result-based funding, and this is a very critical element of it. So via regular reporting, continuous monitoring, and periodic reviews, the EIT will collect data and analyze KIC's progress, and of course flag if we believe that there are some threats or the KIC is off track. Finally, I would like to explain you some potential sources of revenues. As already mentioned, diversification is key, and the KIC will run a lot of different types of activities with different types of revenue streams attached to the different activities. So let's start with the membership fees, because this is the most imminent source of revenue from the beginning. It's a non-restricted source, so the KIC is free to choose how to use these revenues. This is cash from the beginning. A KIC can introduce different membership categories with different rights, obligations, different fees. However, very important to remember that the membership fee must be linked to the value proposition of the KIC and decoupled from the grant. So it cannot be a precondition to receive a grant, or there cannot be any cap of the grant linked to the membership fee. So this is not a payback scheme, but this is linked genuinely to the value proposition of the KIC. Then the second point on my slide is about the investment portfolio, where we see a great potential, in particular in the business creation area. There are quite many successes of previous KICs. So if you look into our success stories, you will see that quite a lot of startups had been nurtured by KICs, where the KICs are taking equity stakes or options, safe agreements, for example, in the startup supported. Of course, you have to pay attention to some eligibility rules. EIT grant cannot be directly used to acquire shares in a company. However, you can develop some fruitful schemes, offer services which are eligible to be reimbursed, or you can invest, of course, your own funds. The KIC can invest its own funds into startups. Then the third point is it's important to negotiate commercial agreements with consortia implementing innovation projects. Typical schemes are revenue sharing, success fees, revenues from IP can be explored. Very important to foresee this already when you are selecting projects, when you are launching a call to select innovation projects, because we know that this is a difficult negotiation. So it has to be part of the criteria when selecting your projects. Then next point is about successful programs, services, initiatives developed by the KIC, where the KIC can charge fees and collect revenues from these services. For example, in the education area, there are plenty of programs, in particular in professional education, where the KICs are successfully charging fees. Then synergies are to be developed from the beginning. There's a great potential to tap into other public and private funding sources. KICs can become key players in implementing flagship European policies. There are several great examples of existing KICs. And last but not at least, fund initiatives. So KICs can develop their own fund initiatives, which can directly contribute to the financial sustainability. For example, income flows via management fees, or simply increasing the value of the KICs on investments by a follow-on investment through this fund. Also, KIC funds can be part of the value proposition. So it's an access to finance services to startups, scale-ups. To close my presentation, final remark is that financial sustainability is a crucial element of the model. However, this is obviously not the only ultimate goal. So each KIC must achieve societal, social, economic, environmental impact in its thematic field. However, at the same time, the innovation ecosystem must become financially self-sustainable over the life cycle of the KIC. For this reason, this objective, financial sustainability objective, must be encoded already in the DNA of the KIC. So you have to start to plan for it from day zero, even when you start to prepare your proposal. Thank you very much. Looking forward to the questions at the end of this session.
Thank you, David. Next, we will have Alessandra Palla, who's the head of Grant Implementation Unit, and she will walk you through the contractual relations of grants here at EIT.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that it's very good to be here to discuss about this very interesting topic. So my presentation will be basically around the EIT operational model, the EIT funding model. But before going ahead, maybe it's better to understand also what are European partnership, because the future EIT KIC will be EIT Water will be a European partnership. Those are strategic instruments which enable long-term collaborations between the European Union and the public or private partners to address some of the Europe's most pressing challenges. And they are doing this through actions and initiatives related to research and innovation. The KIC is an institutionalized European partnership, which means that it's done between the Union, the EU member states, and the industry, and they require a legislative proposal, as it was also mentioned earlier by my colleagues. And they are implemented by dedicated structures created for that purpose. So from this point of view, the EIT has been created exactly for that purpose. Now, you can imagine that in this case, they are part of Horizon Europe, and as such, they have to be aligned to Horizon Europe priorities and indicators. And on the other side, there should be an appropriate balance between the three sides of the knowledge triangle, so education, research, and business. This also requires a continuous openness and transparency during the implementation. So we talked about the fact that partnerships are composed by different partners. Well, in this case, the expansion has to be done through clear accession and exit criteria and rules, which have to be public, for instance. The identification and the selection of projects that the partnership will have to go through open calls, and also the continuous monitoring and portfolio management has to be ensured. The compliance also with the EIT good governance principles, it was mentioned earlier. I will not go through that in the details, but I would like also to mention the fact that it's very important to have efficient and cost-effective structures comprising of the KIC legal entity and also the innovation hubs, which have to be located around Europe. Clear decision-making, supervision, and executive functions, and it was mentioned by my colleague earlier, are essential in this case. Now, the contractual relationships were somehow mentioned earlier, but here we touched upon in more details. The innovation communities are selected through a call for proposal, which is the one that we are going to launch very soon for the KIC Water. After the innovation community has been selected, there will be a startup grant agreement between the consortium and the EIT. during the first year after the designation. Once this is confirmed after the startup agreement, there will be the signature of a long-term cooperation, which is established through a partnership agreement. And the new KIC will have to establish a legal entity that will approve a strategic agenda, which has to be endorsed also by the EIT. Now, EIT will finance the activities, in this case, of the new legal entity of the KIC and the partnership through specific multi-year grant agreements. In this case, the KIC will have to submit a business plan and also the reports where we are basically checking what kind of activities are going to be implemented and how. Now, the KIC has autonomy in select the partnership and the projects, mostly the project and the activities, and the relationship between the KIC and the partners will have to be done through internal arrangements, usually sub-grant agreements. Now, we talked about, and also the colleagues talked about the funding model. Here, maybe we can see it more in detail. It's a peculiar model because basically it's planned to enhance and incentivize the commitment from all the partners by gradually reducing the EIT funding linked to the maturity of the KIC itself. We start by providing up to 100% of funding in the first 4 years of the startup phase. And then afterwards, we will provide up to 80% of funding in the ramp-up phase, so between the 5th and the 7th year of implementation, reaching up to 70% between the 8th and 11th years of implementation, and gradually we'll reduce our co-funding until the 15th year of implementation. Why are we doing this? As it was mentioned also earlier, we are expecting the KICs to increase the level of private and public investment so that this will facilitate the transition towards financial sustainability, which has to be completed at the end of the 15th year. The funds that will be received, we will not be just providing the funds, but as mentioned earlier, it will be performance-based. So the KIC has to demonstrate that the performance is in line with the expected plan. We will be using different mechanisms through continuous monitoring reviews so that the EIT and the governing board would apply preventive or corrective measures to make sure that the KIC will reach its success towards the end of this long period. Here I'm at the end of my presentation, but maybe it's also very important because it will give you an idea on how this is actually established. So we will have a multi-annual grant. This multi-annual grant will be based on a business plan, which will be divided in different portfolios. And the KIC and the partnership will have to implement activities both by using EIT funds, but also using non-EIT funds. These activities put together will have to be reported to EIT. We will also monitor them to make sure that everything is done according to what we are expected and what is indicated in the business plan. Those activities will have to contribute to the KPI, to the impact framework. My colleagues will be introducing the impact framework shortly. And all this will be done by using the Horizon Europe framework and system. For simplification, many of you we are pretty sure that you are quite knowledgeable about that, but also let's say that the part that will be of the grant that will be used by the KIC and provided by EIT will be following and should be aligned to the Horizon Europe funding, implementation mechanism, paying modalities, eligibility rules, control strategies, etc. So from this point of view, it won't be a novelty for some of you. So this is the end of my presentation, and I will be very happy to answer your questions at the end of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alessandra, for painting this very good picture. Now, my colleague Szabolcs Borda will take even a layer deeper to talk about the grant cycle or life cycle. Go ahead, Szabolcs.
Exactly. Thanks a lot for the floor, Angela, and we're welcome to everybody participating in this webinar. And indeed, as Angela mentioned, so far you received a pretty good understanding of the framework under the EIT and the KICS are operating. But in the end of the day, the grants are channeled via grant agreements. Therefore, it is good moment to look at the operational end a bit and go through the grant cycle that the EIT uses. So the objective of this part is to give you a general overview and then give you some unique features on the specificities as well, which applies to the EIT KIC environment. So this is what I will do exactly. So firstly, let me show you the overview of the EIT grant cycle. That is pretty standard from the point of view is that to show that there is a preparatory phase which usually takes place or goes through first year, almost complete year. So in the first quarter of the year, the EIT makes available the criteria for funding, which is channeled via an invitation to the KICS. And later on, following the summer, somewhere in the quarter three, so third quarter of the year, the KICS are submitting their business plans, basically the proposals, in order to show how they would like to implement their grants, and still somewhere before the end of that year, typically, the EIT does perform the assessment of the business plans and the proposals, and the EIT arrives to an allocation decision. So this is the so-called preparatory phase, and the second phase is about the implementation, when actually you as a beneficiary or the KIC will start the implementation of the operations, start to select projects, implement project, and on. So this implementation phase is obviously evidently starts with the signature of the grant agreement, and during the implementation, the usual steps of the pre-financing payment, reporting, further payments are taking place, monitoring activities, and so on. These are the typical steps that are going on. The duration here, I will show you that later, can be multiple. So we have different durations, but we'll see that in more detail later. And finally, following the implementation, there is the final reporting phase where the KICS are always requested to submit the final report, which covers the duration of the grant agreement, and this is where the EIT identifies the final grant amount and will pay the final balance to the KICS. It goes without saying, and as it happens in all grant environments, we do have also checks and controls translated into ex-post audits. These are typically happening following the final balance payment, but due to the fact that we have multi-annual grants, it's sometimes we already perform ex-post checks throughout implementation after, for example, an interim payment. So this is the general description of the grant cycle, and let me continue by showing you the unique features or specificities or good to remember parts, okay, when we talk about the grant cycle. So the good news here is that EIT and the KICS are fully integrated under Horizon Europe operational framework, which also means that we are part of the IT systems. So we use the funding and tender portal, and the complete e-grant suite is at our disposal, which is very good news because we benefit, you KICS and the EIT, we do benefit of the standard general guidance that is available to all European beneficiaries or Horizon Europe beneficiaries, meaning templates and also quite useful help desk services that can be accessed by the beneficiaries, so and also by the KICs, therefore. So as already was mentioned by my colleagues previously, there are two main type of grant agreements that we are signing. So the first one is the so-called startup grant agreement that is designed to set the successful consortium up as a KIC. And this is a typically one year grant, so an annual grant. And in case of a successful startup period, the KIC is established as a KIC, and therefore the EIT signs the partnership agreement for the 7 to 15 years, as explained by Adam. And under the partnership agreement, we sign the multi-annual grants, which are currently set to 3 years. Nevertheless, we don't know in the end of the day how this will look in the future. In the future period, the regulation for the EIT and for Horizon Europe, or FP10, in other words, may change. So we'll see how that will be impacted. What is interesting to remember, and which is also a unique feature, it's not happening at too many grant environments, is the fact that I was telling you that there is this EIT invitation that requests the KICs to submit the business plan proposals, and in the beginning, there is, for the multi-annual grants, there is an initial larger allocation, and the agreement is signed for 3 years. Nevertheless, EIT frequently allocates additional grants. So there are top-ups, which are also resulting from additional invitations. So this is also something that you have to keep in mind, that the moment we sign these multi-annual grant agreements, there are chances to receive additional funding in case the complete picture and the proposals that you're submitting are positively assessed. Yeah, I was mentioning the fact that e-grants are used. So this goes really through the complete suite of e-grants. So when it comes to the proposal submission for the KIC designation, that's completely done under e-grants, the submission and evaluation platform. So is the submission of the initial startup grant, and also for the initial multi-annual grant. And later on, the complete cycle of payments, reportings, amendments are supported by the e-grant suite, which is very beneficial for both of us, both the KIC and the EIT, because the workflows are very much developed and increase efficiency. Other positive note here are the payments, which I would like to mention, meaning that we initially provide a pretty good level of pre-financing at the moment of the signature of the grant, and we do foresee additional pre-financings and interim payments. And as experience shows, the EIT so far was in a position to provide a relatively stable cash flow to our KICs. I have to make a caveat that this is always subject to budget availability for the given budgetary year. So we hope that this is going to be kept up. As I said, monitoring of the implementation is a key feature. This was explained by Adam. So there is a continuous there are continuous interactions between the EIT and the KIC to make sure that the KIC strategic innovation agenda and governance principles, for example, are respected. There is a continuous reporting and periodic reporting, which serves to continuously keep the EIT aware of the progress that the KICs are making. And finally, just to mention that EIT does implement a so-called grant assurance strategy, which combines the ex-ante and ex-post checks in order to make sure that the EIT has a relatively good assurance of the respect of the legality and regularity of the EIT grants. And this is where I would stop and give back the floor to Angela. And thanks a lot, and ready to answer the questions in the end.
Thank you so much, Szabolcs. And we see some questions coming in, so we encourage you to keep asking questions. There's no such things as silly ones. Next, we will have Eva Antanasova, who will go even a layer afterwards of the grants to see how we measure impact.
Thank you, Angela, and good morning, everyone. Yes, I'll talk briefly about our impact model, and we'll highlight some indicators we use for planning, monitoring, and evaluation purposes. Let me just start by saying that we fully adopted the impact pathway approach, similarly to the Horizon Europe program. This means that we measure the various resources we invest in the KIC activities, human, financial resources, and then we looked at the results, what comes out of these activities in short term, in medium term, and also in long term perspective. You may know by now that the Horizon Europe program has 9 impact pathways, and we contribute to 4 of these, namely addressing EU policy priorities, generating innovation-based growth, creating more and better jobs, and leveraging investments in research and innovation. Well, the ultimate goal of the KICs, including the new KIC, is to create impact, and we look in terms of impact at several layers. So economic impact is important for us, as well as societal impact and educational impact. You can see some examples of the indicators to measure these impacts. In terms of economic impact, what you have to plan for the future is creating new jobs, or establishment of financially sustainable innovation ecosystem, as well as we are measuring here the revenues and the growth of the company supported by the KICs. The societal impact is very much linked to the societal challenge addressed by each KIC, and they should be defined already in your application for the KIC in water. And in terms of educational impact, for us, it's important to follow on the career growth of our graduates, the employment, and of course, the integration of the universities in the entire innovation ecosystem. As you know, there are 3 core areas of operation of the KICs: innovation, business creation, and education. So in terms of these pathways, we have specific indicators which are important for us and good for you to know in terms of your planning. With regard to the innovation impact pathway, we measure the innovations launched on the market, but we also measure the revenues from these innovations and also the revenue growth of the companies by employing these innovations, and of course the societal benefits from the products, services developed by the KICs. In terms of the business creation, of course, we are looking here about the startups created or supported by the KICs, but also the investment attracted by these KICs in the medium-term perspective, and in a longer term, we measure the sustainability of the startups supported, created by the KICs, as well as the jobs they created, and of course, how they contribute to resolving the societal challenge they are addressing. The education pathway is also very interesting because we follow, as I mentioned, on the career growth and the employment of our graduates and what happens after graduating from our education programs, whether they started their own businesses or they joined existing companies, and how they actually implement the entrepreneurship skills they obtained. One important document for you to consider and to consult when developing your application for the KIC is the EIT Impact Framework. You can find it on our website. It will be shared with you together with these slides. You will see in the framework there are about 40 indicators which are relevant for all the KICs, and you have to plan around these indicators in your application form. 7 of these indicators are particularly important for us. You can see them on the slide, because they are used for the governing board decision for the future funding allocations of the KIC. This was already explained by my colleague Adam at the beginning of this session, but it's really useful for you to consider these indicators at the planning stage. Like, for example, number of innovations launched on the market with sales revenue of at least 10,000 euros. So you can see that we're looking not just about developed innovations or tested innovations, but we're looking about these large-scale innovations which are already on the market, they're used by the clients, they're commercialized. The same goes for the second indicator we have here, number of startups that are not just registered as new companies, but also already having financial transactions of 10,000 euro. We also have core indicators to follow on the education program, gender balance, and of course to measure the financial sustainability of the KIC. How we use the impact framework? We use it for several reasons. If you see the upper horizontal level of the diagram, This is about the planning phase. So we use the impact framework for planning. Each KIC is developing a 7-year strategic agenda. And already in this document, in this strategy, the KICs are planning for their societal impacts as well as the targets for the economic and societal impacts to be achieved for certain milestone years. Also, the KICs are planning annual targets for the short-term KPIs we have in our impact framework. And you can see in terms of the low-level vertical horizontal layer here of the diagram, we use the impact framework also for monitoring and also for evaluation purposes. The monitoring is through the grant reports that was just explained, and this is based on the short-term KPIs reported against the targets. And then we also have evaluations where we looked at the progress against impact indicators. In the application form for your KIC proposal, you will see there will be a table in which very briefly you have to explain the vision and the mission as you see it for the future KIC. And also you have to explain the strategic objectives you have and link this to societal and economic impacts. You have to define them. You have to include your indicators to measure the impact and also the targets for the impacts to be created by 2033, by the end of the 7-year partnership agreement. And finally, just to remind what was already explained by my colleague, we are legally obliged to have several evaluations. The first one is in the middle of the partnership agreement or the 3 interim reviews, and also 7-year comprehensive assessment at the end of the partnership agreement. Then the outcome of this assessment, if positive, a new partnership agreement can be offered or can be signed for another 7-year period, and the cycle of evaluations is repeated. What is important here to know is that your application form will be in the basis of these evaluations. So basically, you will be assessed whether you delivered on your promise and against indicators which are included in the impact framework and the targets we already have in your application form. I'll stop here, and this is all from me. Happy to respond to any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva, for the concise overview. And thank you also for our participants for listening to all our speakers. Now we have enough time for a good Q&A, so I'd like to invite all our speakers to come back to open their mics and screens, and then we'll get right away started with the questions. So our first question will be going to David, and it touched upon examples of how KICs have developed concrete examples of financial sustainability. So where do they get some of their revenues from? And maybe you can touch upon this in terms of long-term and short-term.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a very relevant question. So I will give you some concrete examples. So first, membership fees. That's very concrete. It's a cash inflow from the beginning. Actually, KICs are transparent. So if you go to their website, you can see the membership schemes. But just to give some examples, the highest membership fee I'm aware of is 100,000 euros annually, but for some KICs, the highest membership fee is 30,000 euros, and the lowest it can be as low as 5,000 or even 0, because there are membership fee waivers for certain types of partners like SMEs. Another relevant example is linked to the investment portfolio. So acquiring a minority share in early stage startups, typically it's 5 to 15%. So really the KIC does not want to have a controlling interest. Also safe agreement. So it's a simple agreement for future equity. When the triggering event for conversion is a follow-on investment later, please bear in mind, it's very important that this should be explicitly part of your call and selection when selecting startups to have this FS scheme. And maybe the last example is linked to synergies. KICs are successful in bringing in other public sources. Net Zero Cities run by EIT Climate KIC, EIT Digital is participating in regional innovation valleys or European digital innovation hubs. And EIT Energy is very prominent in skills development for big industrial policies like the European Battery Alliance Academy.
Perfect. Thank you so much, David. Next, Adam, we'll come to you with another question. And it's asking, do you need to have the business model ready at the proposal stage, the business plan of the consortium?
Yes, so it's the business model. So in the proposal, the focus will be on the strategic approach, how you want to address this area. Of course, also the strength of the partnership, and of course, above all, the impact that you would like to achieve within these 15 years in the societal challenge on human capital, job creation, economic growth, and so on and so forth. So in the proposal itself, there's no need to prepare a business plan, but of course you have to outline the business model, how you will make money out of all these activities. I think it's also good at this point to mention the, let's say, sequence of events. So you will now present proposals, and then the selected KIC will have to prepare the strategic agenda in the startup year. Eva has mentioned what that strategic agenda looks like. And then based on the strategic agenda, the KIC will prepare the first multi-annual business plan for execution. So that's sort of the sequence of events. We'll also have an info day. We plan to do that after the launch of the call beginning of next year. Then we will go into more details on call criteria and so on and so forth. I hope this is sufficient for now. Thank you.
Definitely, thank you. Our next question will come to you, Alessandra. Can a university be a partner in a call, or do they need to become a full member first? And maybe it's good to differentiate at what stage.
Yes, indeed. So if we're talking about a call launched by the KIC, then of course there is no need to be a partner, full member of the partnership. So each, not only universities, but also other entities that are obviously listed as entities to be addressed by the call, can be easily taking part without any restriction.
Thank you. Next, Szabolcs, question to you. Is EIT open to make a grant agreement with city municipalities or different types of wastewater management organizations?
Thanks a lot for the question. I think the answer should point at the EIT model and the EIT KIC model as such, and the process of the designation. So EIT is not directly entering into contractual relationship with different economic operators or municipalities, for example. The whole process is about first the designation to be part of first of all the consortium which is bidding for the designation itself. So that's the first step where you as a municipality could be involved in a grant and receive an EIT grant, or later on, once there is a designated partnership, later on there should be a reasonable level of openness where, in case you have a good business proposal, the partnership would be ready to welcome you in the partnership and provide you grants.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Szabolcs. Now we will go back to David. And this is a very good question. A little bit, you spoke about this before. How would you recommend that startups or EIT funding for startups can be leveraged or combined for other types of funding to build the equity of the KIC?
Yeah, so the KIC can provide services to startups or support startups with services developed like coaching, pitch training, matchmaking services, access to finance services, and so on. And maybe I would build on this access to finance services. It's very relevant. I refer to the funds, but also the KIC can connect the startup to venture capitalists, to business angels. So that's a direct leverage. And then when the KIC has a stake in the startup, and then can further grow the value of the startup through the access to funding services. But there are also access to market, access to customer services. You are on mute, Angela.
Sorry, classic. Thank you so much. Next, we'll come back to Alessandra, and then after go to Eva. And it's the question we have for you, Alessandra, if you give me a moment, is about how many EIT KIC partners or KIC partners can access EIT funding. Could you propose specific activities to be included in the business plan?
Well, in this case, it very much depends if these partners are member of the KIC. The business plan is not a collection of different entities. It's a comprehensive document which has to include, let's say, a general portfolio of activities that are meant to reach specific objectives. So we cannot, it's not a collection of single project ideas that could be potentially implemented. The business plan has to be submitted by the KIC, by the KIC legal entity specifically. And if a partner is, if let's say an entity is a member of a partner, is a member of a KIC, I would expect that maybe discussions can take place inside the partnership itself. So there is the possibility for an entity to somehow, I'm not saying influence, because as I said earlier, it's a more comprehensive document, which is reaching a specific objective and doesn't go into the level of details of single projects. So this has to be understood.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And next, Eva, I think a very good question maybe for the audience to understand is how detailed should they be in their proposal in terms of measuring the impact or mapping the impact that they hope to achieve?
Yeah, okay, thanks, Angela. Well, that's really a very good question, because the application stage is the first time when the KICs should plan for impact. For us, this is really important. Basically, the strategic objectives, whether they achieved or not, depends whether you achieved the impact. And in order to be able to assess the application and also the potential of the proposal for a future KIC, and for the future also to have a good baseline for the performance assessment of the KIC, it's really important to be as detailed as possible, both in terms of economic impact, and you can see some of the economic impact KPIs in the impact framework that you have to use, but also you have to be as detailed as possible in terms of defining the societal impacts you're going to deliver. That's really critical for us, and also for the evaluation of the application.
Thank you, Eva. And we have still time maybe for one or two questions. Adam, we're going to come back to you. How detailed should the proposal be in terms of the governance structure of the proposed KIC?
Yes, so indeed, and I think there's some details where the board steering committee management team should already be included. So I think we have to separate two things here. One is, let's say, the structure, and the other is the, let's say, the persons. So in terms of structure, I mean, you will not have to present already the full details of all the governance systems and all that. But the basic idea of how the KIC legal entity will be structured, so what kind of legal form you want to choose, and then how that will be governed. So that's one thing, but obviously later on during the startup year, this can be then refined further. And the other thing is the persons, and it was mentioned board and management team and all that. And I think it's important that first the KIC will start with the so-called interim management team. So interim CEO, CFO, COO, and these persons will have to be included in the call and the CVs and all that. So this will be part of the criteria that we're going to publish. And there will surely be an interim supervisory board that will supervise the work of the interim management team. And then later on during the startup year, as I mentioned at the beginning, the partner assembly will have to set up the first permanent board, and then the permanent board will have to appoint the permanent CEO. So this is how we will transition gradually from proposal stage through an interim team to a permanent governance structure with a full board and management team in place. I hope that's clear.
Thank you so much, Adam. And I'm going to answer probably two more of the questions with my next two slides that are here. But I would like to thank our speakers for really giving this in-depth overview and for answering all these questions. If you bear with me for our last minute, I'll share with you the next steps of what's to come, also addressing some of the questions. So here we have an updated indicative timeline for you that you can see. Of course, this is indicative, but we hope to stick to this which has been updated in terms of month. Before, we've only told you the quarters. So we hope the evaluation criteria, some of the questions are has to do with who can apply. It will be published ahead before the call for proposals will be published, and we hope to do this in the coming month. And then in January, the call for proposals, we hope to have it published by then. And as you can see, also good to be on your radar, there will be an information day expected in the first quarter around February. Well, there'll be even more opportunities for organizations to come together and learn more about the opportunities about the EIT. So this is a little bit more to give you in details about the indicative timeline. This will be on our website, not to worry, as the other slides. And again, if you haven't already done so, there are a lot of questions in terms with different NGOs or wastewater management systems. If you want to contribute, of course, you bring experience in terms of this topic to a consortia. This is your opportunity to do so. You sign up for this networking platform where you could meet interested organizations as well. And hopefully you're able to form or join a consortia that will apply and have the call for proposals. So here's the link to the networking platform that is currently open. Please do apply. We already have over 200 applicants, so there's a large pool of people that are on there waiting to network with you. So, and as again, we will have some useful links. This dedicated section on the EIT website is your go-to page for all information. And of course, please stay tuned with our social media, and all our most up-to-date information will also be advertised on there. So this is all the time we have now. Thank you for allowing us this 2 extra minutes, and we wish you a great rest of the day. And thank you again for joining all 3 or some of our webinars. Bye-bye.